So I had an interesting experience today that, occasionally people, well, this is an interesting thing. In the past, this would have really pissed me off. But I can't say it really pissed me off this time. It just fascinates me that people do shiesty shit like this. And it's interesting because when you don't have to have, like, a really strong negative emotional reaction to the kind of games people play, you just kind of sit back from it and you're like, you know what? I'm not threatened by that. I'm not angered about that. I'm not forced to feel really any way about this thing. And yet I'm still fucking in awe of the fact that just happened. She did that, right? And I had a strange experience this morning of someone sending me a friend request. I think it was already a friend with you, right? And because of that, I was like, okay, we'll give it a shot. We'll see what this person's all about. And, like someone friends you, follows you, maybe they'll do a little peruse of your profile and like a bunch of your stuff or whatever. And so that happened. And then I unfollow a lot of the people that I'm friends with just because I like to keep my newsfeed tidy. It's just, I follow some people, but not that many. So my policy usually is someone friends me, I'm with them for a while, 2 or 3 days later, I make a decision about whether or not I want to continue to see whatever it is they're putting out on a regular basis, or would I rather just go to their profile and look at it all, if they're sharing inspirational quotes or ideas or strategies or videos or whatever. So for this person, I hadn't unfriended them because they're in their like 48-hour probation period where I'm going to just kind of check them out and see what they're about. And I see about probably 10-15 minutes after this person friends me, a meme which had been created. So this is not something that she just typed into her Facebook. This is something she had to go to her meme maker or whatever to actually make this thing. And it was a quote of something several posts back. But remember, she had clearly gone back into the last week or two of my stuff. And it was a direct quote from me with, I think, 2, possibly 3 words changed. But the basic syntax of the quote was exactly the same. The meaning was exactly the same. The most loaded terminology was exactly the same, right? There was one word in particular that was made this quote unique, made it stand out, made it, unlike certain other things that you might see, distinguished it from quotes that maybe say something similar to that. That was the same. Now, she puts this on her profile picture. She makes a post about this, and there's no attribution to the person who came up with it, and a strong implication that it was her that came up with it. And then other people are saying, oh, that's a wonderful quote, spot on, and she's agreeing with them, and all this. And I'm just thinking to myself, I don't think that this relationship's going to work out. And I'm amazed that, you fucking did this. And the funny thing is that you're not just stalking my profile and cribbing my shit and sharing it secretly. You became friends with me. And if you understand how Facebook works, what that means is I'm going to be seeing the things that you're doing. And so that leads me to believe that you think that you came up with that quote, which isn't true. That's not coming up with a quote. That's stealing a quote and then fencing it, right? By, scraping the serial number off of it or something like that. And I just was like, what is the deal with that? What makes you think that that's an appropriate thing to do? What makes you think that that is anything other than just pretty much plagiarism? That's gross. And I'm just really grossed out by that. And the fact that you follow me, and I'm thinking to myself, maybe this person has the ability to be creative, but this is not it. And then the interesting thing is, I'm looking back through some other stuff, and I see word for fucking word a paragraph that Melissa wrote a while ago. Word for fucking word. And it's in an essay that this person wrote. And the rest of it was, I assume, her writing, unless she copied and pasted from somebody else and is just taking multiple things. But there's no quotations around it. There's no attribution to you. There's no mention of you anywhere there. It is simply, she took a paragraph that you wrote, which was really the essence of what the whole essay was about, posted it to her wall, and is pretending as though she came up with it. That's revolting, absolutely revolting behavior for somebody who's a creative. You're lying to yourself, you're lying to your followers, you're lying to everybody who's going to consume that, and maybe you're maintaining some veneer of plausible deniability because you aren't saying, I said this, or you're not putting your name at the bottom of it. But everybody knows, and you know, that what you're doing is that you are implying that that's your idea when it's not, and that's gross, and it says things about what you must think about yourself and your role in the creative sphere. And it says that you believe some gross things about yourself. Like, for example, this is the best that I can do. Or this is something that I'm entitled to do. Or this is an okay and appropriate use of other people's content. Or this is an okay and appropriate way to get strokes from other people, or attention for myself, or to build a personality or a persona. And none of those things are true. Those things are grossly, and I mean that in both senses of the word, totally, largely, and also sort of off-puttingly inaccurate. It's a misconception. And so I obviously unfriend this person because I'm not going to confront them, one, because to me it's like, if a person has the, what is it? There's something so brazen about, and this is the interesting thing to me too. I've been inspired by numerous people, right? And so I've taken a lot of ideas that other people have had, and I've ruminated on them, I've applied them in my life, I've incorporated them in the manner in which I do things, you know. That's normal, that's natural, that's a part of the creative process. That's great. I encourage people. I love it when people use an idea that maybe they happen to get from me, whether I came up with it or I just transmitted it from somebody else to them, and they take it and they do wonderful things with it. That, or, you know, if you're influenced by a teacher, Neville Goddard, Wayne Dyer, Eric Barron, I mean, Bill Harris has been a tremendous mentor for me. Richard Bandler has been hugely influential. I could not parse out the influence that these people have had on my thinking. So a lot of what you're hearing from me is the result of their ideas entering into my brain and amalgamating with ideas that were already there and sort of being woven into things that I do in my work with other people. And it's kind of like, okay, this worked well, that didn't work well, what's the commonality there? Coming to all these kind of interesting discoveries about stuff and the way things work, and maybe some insight or guess about why the things that work as well as they do and why other things don't. And so that's not what we're talking about here. What you don't do is you don't become friends with somebody, scroll through their feed, like a few things, then get a week or two back, take something that they said word for word, create a meme, change 2 words around and pretend like you made it. That's pathetic. That's pathetic. And anybody who, and this is another thing that's really important too, you don't want to allow people to use notions or misconceptions of spirituality or enlightenment or friendliness or, oh, we just want to get the word out there. You don't want to allow people to use that stuff as a kind of truncheon, right, to threaten you into allowing them to wholesale steal your shit. It's fucking bullshit. That spirituality is not the ability for me to not notice your bullshit and shenanigans, or for you to not notice my bullshit and shenanigans. That's not what spirituality is. That's not what enlightenment is. That's not what magnanimity is. Magnanimity, in this case, was me not calling this person a plagiarizing fraud right on their Facebook page. That was the magnanimous thing to do, not to pretend like I'm okay with it. And I think that, you know, if you feel inclined to call somebody out on stuff like this, maybe that's a worthwhile thing to do, not to change their behavior. I don't necessarily think that you're going to succeed in changing their behavior, but what you can do is enforce the reality that says that there's a cost to that behavior. And the cost of that behavior is, if I see you stealing my shit, I'm going to say, gee whiz, seems like you're stealing my shit here. Why are you doing that, right? And I think that if a person is going to make their way in life lifting other people's stuff, it's not unreasonable or unkind or unfair to make it so that they incur a certain amount of indignity in the process, because that's an indignity that is inherent to theft of ideas, theft of material property, theft of whatever else you want to call it. And, you know, one of two things is true. Either this person is so well practiced in the art of self-deception that they don't realize what they're doing, in which case perhaps you could bring it to their attention, or they don't care, or it's kind of some combination of the two. They've been doing it for, so it's kind of a slippery slope, you know. But my thing is, everybody knows what plagiarism is. Doesn't nobody not know better than that, so to speak. Like, I'm sorry, I have a hard time believing anyone who's smart enough to use Facebook and who knows how to create a meme doesn't understand enough about intellectual property, doesn't understand enough about, I'm not even talking about legality here, I'm just talking about human decency and not being gross phony, right? Knows enough to not behave in that way. The person probably is a basically okay person. Probably has the potential to be a lot better person. As far as I know, that's the best thing I can say about anybody. I would like for that to be true about myself, and I'm a basically okay person, and that I have the potential to be a lot better than I am, right? But that doesn't mean that I get to engage in gross behavior with impunity. And it doesn't mean that I should be shielded or protected from the logical consequences of my actions by other people's hang-ups and trepidation about calling people out on things when they're behaving in a way that's inappropriate. Do you know what I'm saying? I don't know. I mean, it's just weird that we sort of live in it's fascinating to me that we have people who consider, they see an idea and they say, oh, I know what I'll do. I'll take that idea and I'll change a couple of insignificant words, leave the message basically the same, leave the structure, the content of the quote exactly the same. And then I'll pretend like I came up with. It's very easy to add someone's name to the bottom of things. Melissa and I delight in sharing other people's ideas, and we delight when other people share our ideas in a way that is just sort of basically respectful, not overtly deceptive. It's not even, it's not even important really. And that's the thing too for me, is it's not important, I guess, that my name be on the thing. It's that I'm concerned about something that I'm seeing in this person. I'm seeing a pattern of questionable behavior, and I don't know where that ends. Does that stop at that particular post? Obviously not, because they're doing it to you too, right? And so I guess when you see stuff like that and it doesn't really sit right with you, I would just encourage you to feel comfortable taking whatever action makes sense to you. Don't take any mess. Don't put up with any bullshit. To me, spirituality and personal growth and all this stuff, one of the big things that it's about is making me free to fucking do whatever it is I think I need to do in response to the realities with which I'm confronted. And what that means is the freedom to see some bullshit and go, that right there is some bullshit, and cut them off, cut them out, block them, unfriend them, confront them, tell somebody else about whatever it is that I feel like I want to do. I get to do that, and I don't have to worry about what so-and-so's going to think or about whether or not that's the right thing to do or anything like that. Being graceful means seeing shitty behavior and not definitely jumping to the conclusion that you're dealing with a totally shitty, irredeemable person. That's being graceful. Being graceful doesn't mean spraying some Febreze over the shitty behavior so that it doesn't smell as bad, or you know what I mean? Like that's not what it is. And I think that having that freedom is like, do I want to be a life coach of being or whatever it is, that I am, and the role that I play in people's lives? If that means I got to overlook shit like that or pretend like that, it doesn't kind of like seem inappropriate to me. The thing for me about personal freedom is not getting to the point where you get so good at pretending that things aren't inappropriate that you act like nothing ever bothers you. It's how can I respond resourcefully when I'm confronted with inappropriate behavior? How can I have a good day? This is good. I actually am enjoying having this conversation. Melissa suggested that we turn this into a video. That's a great idea. This is responding resourcefully to shitty behavior. I'm getting content out of this. I got a YouTube channel. I'm trying to get this thing going. I'm having we only go down the mountain once a week. It's a good opportunity for me to create something where I'm talking about an issue other people might be dealing with. That's good. I feel good about this. I like dissecting this stuff and talking about it and figuring out WTF is going on with this person, and I think that's what it's really about. There was a time when I thought that it was about figuring out how to, I better get my ego out of the way. Why is this bothering me? Why is this triggering you, Steve? It's triggering me because it's bullshit. That's fucking why. It's inappropriate behavior that people shouldn't be engaging in. And so I can either pretend like I don't know that basic common sense thing, or I can say, okay, given the fact that I live in a world where people do this, how can I let that be as emotionally okay as I possibly can? And how can I get something more out of it? This was a quote that I posted a couple weeks ago, I think, several days, right? Nobody's seeing this on Facebook unless they're going through my profile just looking at stuff, and I'm not so deluded that I think that armies of people are doing that on a regular basis. And so that basically I had kind of milked that idea for all it was worth this go around, right? Maybe I'd post it to Instagram later, or maybe I'd talk about it at length at another time. But it was basically over. And if this, this little rascal hadn't come along and swiped it, and if I hadn't have noticed, I wouldn't have something to work with. So do I appreciate her? No. But I appreciate sort of what is, and I'm responding to what is, and I'm exploiting and taking advantage of and leveraging everything I can about my reality. I'm sort of, I'm kind of making lemonade here. It's tart, but that's how I like it. And I think it's like real shit. That's the thing that I like about this too, is that you're going to encounter people who do shifting, shady, untoward, inappropriate, just sometimes kind of bald face, in your face, fuck you levels of inconsiderate shenaniganry, right? That's going to happen. That's going to be a part of your life. And so then the question becomes, how can I deal with that as resourcefully as possible? I think the first thing is get free, right? Get free to do whatever the fuck you want to do in response to that stuff. Short of like, threatening their life or attacking you or something like that. That's probably a little overboard. But you know what I'm saying? If it bothers you and you have problems confronting people and you think you'd like to be able to confront people, I'd confront some people just to get over the fear of doing it. And I wouldn't confront them expecting to get a certain outcome. I would confront them because I want to be able to confront a person if confronting them seems like the best thing for me to do in this situation. If it's simply cutting them off and cutting them out, if they're trying to play a game with you, which is very likely, this is a thing that happens in relationships. You and I are in a relationship. I don't know, maybe you want to call me a narcissist, or maybe you want to label it this, that, the other thing. But anyway, I behave in ways that are inappropriate, that I know that you don't like, that I know make you feel bad, that I know devalue you, whatever. But I have a sense of what you're able and willing to tolerate, and I have a sense of what you're afraid to do, confront people. I have a sense of your phobia of calling someone out inappropriately and then you being the one in the wrong, or you have a fear maybe of confronting somebody and knowing that they're wrong, but they have a way with words that you don't have, and they're able to kind of sandbag you and pigeonhole you into a corner and make you feel wrong even when you're totally 100% right. You know what I'm saying? And so you're afraid to confront that person. That's a small life. That's a constricted life. There's an opportunity to expand some personal freedom there. And if that were me, I would want to be able to tell me to fuck off. You know what I'm saying? I would want to be able to, one, articulate myself better. I want to figure out what gets in the way of if I know you're up to some bullshit, why can't I tell you precisely what it is in a way that makes understanding inescapable for you, that makes it impossible to not deny? Why can't I do that? Do I get afraid? Do I get so flustered, so angry? What is it? What prevents me? If it's maybe what I need to be able to do is just kick you to the curb without offering you a word of explanation. Maybe I need to feel free from the obligation to justify my well-founded experience of you by being able to convince you that my experience of you is well-founded. Here's a little kind of secret of life for you. People toward whom you are justified in having a very unpleasant experience, just to say assholes, idiots, douchebags, jerks, narcissists, whatever you want to call them, the people that aren't pleasant to be around, the more justified you are in having an unpleasant experience of those people, the less likely it is that they're going to be willing to hear what your justification for not liking them or for having a problem with what they're doing is, right? And so the more important it is that you not need them to understand the consequences of your experience of them, like not wanting to have anything to do with them, in order for you to be okay with those consequences. It's very clear to me that it's a silly thing to do to require the worst people in my life to understand why I don't want to be around them in order for me to feel okay making a choice to not be around them. Because usually the thing that makes them the worst people in my life is what? They don't listen, they don't hear, they're not willing to hear, they're not able to hear, they're manipulative, they put spin on anything, they're protecting themselves by controlling other people. All things that are going to make it basically impossible for me to explain why I need to get the F away from them in a way that's going to allow them to understand that thing. It's not comfortable necessarily to understand that the reason you don't want to be friends with me is that I act like a fucking asshole a lot of the time. Like, that's not a fun feeling. And most people are very good at avoiding realizations that aren't going to feel good to them. Because it's not going to feel good, and then they're going to have to let you go. And, if I need a punching bag, and my punching bag's like, fuck you, buddy, I don't want to be around here anymore. I got legs, I'm getting out of it. I'm going to be upset. My doormat's walking out of me. My punching bag is walking out of me. You know what I'm saying? All these things in my life that I depend on. My toilet's getting up and leaving, because some people, they just shit on you all the time, right? And if at some point you're just like, you know what? You shit on me all the time, and I don't really like that, so I'm leaving. They're going to they've got a vested interest in not understanding what you're saying. People have a hard enough time communicating when one or the other doesn't have any kind of psychological vested interest in not understanding and not communicating successfully. As soon as you have like an ulterior motive, as soon as you're trying to describe to me some problem you have with me, or some problem you have in our relationship, or just something that's going on in your inner experience, that's already challenging enough. If I want desperately to understand where you're coming from, and you want desperately for me to understand you, and you're good at explaining and I'm good at listening, there's still no guarantee that there's going to be an understanding. There's still no guarantee that my getting some grasp of what you're really going through is going to happen. It's challenging under the best of circumstances. But the moment I have any incentive whatsoever to misunderstand you, there's this really interesting part of my neurology and, by extension of that, my psychology, that goes to work looking for opportunities to misinterpret, to misunderstand, to mishear, to not hear, to whatever I have to do in order to create an experience in me of not understanding that is sufficiently realistic for me to believe that I'm not understanding, so that I can interact with you in a way that suggests or explicitly communicates that I'm not understanding, so that maybe I can convince you that I actually don't understand you, because I've hooked you if one of your prerequisites for doing something that you know is right for you is being able to justify it by feeling like you've been able to convince somebody else that the way that you feel is valid. You see what I mean? And so, actually now I'm kind of glad this lady stole my shit. It's kind of like, yeah, do it again. I want to do it again, because I think I probably have some more ideas about it. I like that. I like to live life that way. I don't like to pretend like there aren't assholes, because I feel like I'm lying to myself, and that doesn't feel good. And I'm not even doing a good job lying to myself. I'm lying to myself in like an absurd 2-year-old who's like face is covered in chocolate, and the mom's like, did you eat that chocolate? And he's like, no. You know what I mean? Like, it's that level of believability, but it's not cute. But if I can just look at reality and say, all right, here's a negative fact. Well, is the fact negative, or is the fact just the way that it is? Somebody stole my stuff. It's not a negative fact. It just is. It's not bad. It just is. It's just a thing that happened. What's negative? What's bad? What's unpleasant? My experience of it, my perception of it, the way it's making me feel, the way that it's preventing me from creating content, from doing the stuff that I want to do today. But look, it's not. It's actually feeding the content. It's actually allowing me probably to say something that someone is going to find really useful. Now, there might be a lot of people who have these kind of personal growth algorithms running, and they're saying, oh, look, his ego's too big, or oh, look, he just needs to let go of this, or oh, look, this is a little harsh, or he said some bad words. That's okay. I'm not interested in those people. I'm interested in people who are listening for ideas. Right? I'm not interested, I guess they might be interested. I'm not trying to speak to those people necessarily, and I'm not trying to be understood by them, because it's not a good idea. I'm trying to distill down ideas that I found really useful, because for whatever reason, I'm actually having a really great time talking about this. And I don't necessarily know exactly why that is, but I have some ideas. And that's kind of what I'm sharing with you here. Some of it is in the content of what I'm talking about. So, like, being free to do what you feel like you need to do with relationship to people who aren't doing right by you, right? Very important, very useful. Zero inhibition whatsoever. If you don't need to know why you don't like what they're doing. If what they're doing isn't working for you, that's fucking enough. This is your life, and it's your time. And you're going to be dead real soon. And you don't have time to fuck around with people who are jerking you around. You're entitled to embrace that perspective, is what I'm saying. I'm not telling you that's the way that it has to be, or that you're obligated to end a relationship you're not ready to end, or that you've got to confront somebody you don't want to confront. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that's a way of thinking that's accessible to you. And it might be, it's one that I want you to be able to try on if you want to, right? And if you try it on and you don't like it, if you don't even like the look of it and you choose not to try it on, or the sound of it, or you don't like me and you don't do it, that's fine. As long as you have the opportunity and the option to do it, I'm happy. That's my job, proffering the opportunity, and sharing the potential advantages of doing it. So that's one thing, the content of what I'm talking about. But then the other thing is like, look what I'm doing right now. Somebody did something that could have ruined my day, you know? And somehow I got lucky and figured out something that allowed me to sense that there was an opportunity there. And I have a partner here who also senses this, right? You better than me, because it was your idea even to make this video, which was a great one. Thanks. You know, I was actually, it's kind of stupid. I think it might even be in this video at the beginning. I'm like, oh, do you think we have a whole video's worth of content? Melissa's like, yeah, don't worry about not being able to talk long enough for a whole video. But anyway, so there's that too. And I think that's the thing. What's great about this? What can I learn from this? You know, who said that? Tony fucking Robbins. I'm not gonna pretend like that's my quote, because it isn't, right? Tony Robbins said that. And they're fucking good questions. You know what I mean? Like, and do you see how I've been able to fill up this whole video with ideas that are my own without stealing Tony Robbins' questions? It's okay. I can incorporate it in there, and I can say, that was Tony Robbins, you know? But the other thing is asking yourself those questions, those Tony Robbins questions. What's great about this? What can I learn from this? Just assuming that there's an opportunity. And when you're like starting a new project, or maybe it's not a new project, it's a current project, whatever. Maybe it's a new day that you're just starting, and you're trying to, you know, it's like a great day and everything's rolling, you're just good, you know? And somebody crops up and does something that feels like derailment. Sometimes it helps a lot to stop and say, wait, you know, what if derailment, right, is made out of realizing that this wasn't a derailment at all? Like, what if it's the realization that what if it's the idea that I can be derailed that's really derailing me? How, you know, because that's the magic of this personal responsibility stuff. It's not about kind of like manning up or womaning up or adulting up and just sort of, you made your bed, now lie in it. That's not what responsibility is about, as far as I can tell. I don't care for that. That doesn't interest me. I can suffer just fine without some asshole telling me that I need to be more responsible for it. You know, I don't need that. What's cool though is that there's a relationship between responsibility and ownership. And ownership doesn't mean, oh, take ownership of the failure, which is to say it's your fault and stop blaming other people. To me, when I own something, I can do whatever I want with it. You know, I can cut that book up and paper mache it. You know what I'm saying? If I own that car, I can take that car apart and try to build a better one, build a new engine or something. You know that when I own a thing, I can take it apart and put it back together. I can melt it down and turn it into something else. I can do whatever the fuck I want with it. And when I really have ownership of my experience of somebody doing something that maybe I don't like, but maybe invites me to feel bad or grumpy all day long or something like that. When I have ownership of that, I can do whatever I want with it. I can find the loose part. I can take the pieces. I can sell it for scrap. I can melt it down. I can use it as inspiration for something else. I could use this as a video to sort of call out everyone who's doing stuff like this. That's not what I particularly chose to do, because I'm interested in patterns here. Like I'm just, for whatever reason, having a pretty good day. And really probably a little bit more kind of riled up and excited than I would be had this event not occurred. And there's a kind of a strange realization in there too, where it's like this bad shit that happens, this unpleasant shit that happens, the inappropriate behavior of other people, stealing your ideas, just being trifling and just gross and stupid or whatever the case may be. The reality is, the truth is that I have a machine in me that runs on that stuff. And it becomes really hard for me to feel things about those people that limits what it's like to be me, to feel ways about them that sort of has a negative effect on what it's like to be me, when I'm aware of the fact and when I acknowledge I got a fucking machine that runs on that fuel. Your shitty behavior, that stupid trifling, just nasty, disgusting, whatever that is that you're up to, that fuels a part of me. And so I can't really hate you for doing that. There's a part of me maybe would like to, but that part is so weak, that part has so little psychic energy, that I'm just not interested in that. Like, I can use this. I'm going to roll this into the dough. Isn't that like how chocolate chip cookies were discovered? Wasn't there like a lady that was like trying to do something else, and she accidentally spilled chocolate?
I think it was a guy, but yeah.
Oh, it was?
I think so.
I feel sure it was a woman for some reason. I guess it doesn't matter. Except in as much as like one of us is right and the other one's not. And everyone knows that a good relationship is built off of just finding out definitively which one it is. Yeah, I would bet some amount of something that was of value to me that it was a woman. That's interesting. Anyway, here nor there. Chocolate chip cookies were invented by accident. Is the story that a mistake happened, and that mistake was embraced and enveloped into an individual's creative process, and as a result of that, the most important invention in human history came to be. Right, second perhaps only to brownies. And I think that's cool. Now, when embrace that idea in theory with regard to your own life, things begin to become interesting. For me, there's a period of kind of a latent period between embracing the idea and having the skill set necessary, having the skill set necessary and having the kind of quickness, which I guess is kind of in a way a skill, having the tools in the skill set is what I'm trying to say, necessary to take that idea and to apply it, manifest it in a particular situation where I'm feeling pissed or miffed or offended or whatever. It takes a little time. But when I really buy into that idea, or not even buy into that idea, when I get really good at considering that idea, like maybe I don't believe that. Maybe I think it's a bunch of bullshit. You don't understand. Life is hard. Life's a bitch. People do shitty things. Bad stuff happens, and sometimes the wrong people come out on top, and it's just not fair. And I tried this, and blah blah blah. You know, that's an experience that people have. I've had that before. And when I'm in that, rather than trying to not believe that, what I do is I sit there and I acknowledge that experience. I acknowledge that I'm in it. I don't say hello experience, how are you? Because I don't like that stuff. But like I'm saying, listen, this is how I feel. And we probably, you know what I mean? If you want to do that, it's fine. Give it a chair, give it a cup of coffee, and sit down and say, hello, shitty experience. Thank you for being here today. I'm gonna love and honor you. Blah blah blah. I'm gonna kick it the fuck out of my head. So I acknowledge that I'm feeling that way, and then I start to wonder. I wonder if it's possible for me to feel this badly about the situation. It's just so irredeemable. It's just so not okay. There's nothing good here. Nothing good in this fucking mind. This mind is barren. This mind is empty. This mind is dangerous and stinky. This mind is just gross. I got the shitty mind. My siblings got the good minds with the gold and the silver and the coal and the helium. Right? Helium's a big commodity. And it just fucking sucks. That's just reality. And I'm just being realistic. I can sit there and feel all that, and then I can go, what if it's possible for me to feel everything I'm feeling right now as intensely as I'm feeling it, and for something wonderful to be true, and for this to be a chocolate chip cookie example? Like, what would it be like if the chocolate chip cookie person, right, did that, but they were in a terrible state where they weren't willing to work with what was? What if they were just like, no, it's ruined. What are you talking about? A new dessert, a new discovery. What are you talking about? No mistakes, happy accidents. That's Bob Ross, not me. What are you talking about? That's just stupid. And she threw it in the trash and got fired from her job and probably starved to death, right? Because I think was this like France in the, this is a long time ago. If you were cooking, you lost your job. Maybe you died. I don't know. But anyway, like, what if that's me right now? And what would happen if, like, what if that idea is hovering, or that reality is hovering right outside of my current state of consciousness? Like, what if it's there, and what if I can feel the way that I'm feeling right now? Like, imagine the most important person in your life to you currently that's living and that's with you, and imagine for a moment that you thought that person was dead, had been killed in a terrible way, right? Shocking, terrible, upsetting, and yet, what if that information was totally false? What if they were alive and well and fine and on their way home to you? What if everything was just... It would be possible for you to be in the midst of that experience, and yet a reality, right, to be wonderful. Everything's fine. They're there. You thought you lost the $1 million, but actually you didn't. The deal went through. Everything's wonderful, but that's not going to stop you from feeling that terrible feeling. And so what I start to like to do is, if I'm already feeling like shit anyway, I might as well do something useful with it. And what I like to do is say, I wonder if it's possible for me to feel as much like shit as I do right now in this moment in time, and for something absolutely fucking fantastic to be possible for me, for there to be a seed of greater benefit, that's Napoleon Hill, for there to be something, right, in this, some way that I could respond mentally or emotionally or behaviorally to the situation that would leave me being better off than I was, or than I would have been had none of this ever transpired. You don't have to believe that, because if I try to believe it when I don't, usually I get kind of psychic pushback. I get this backlash. That's what I talk about in the Beyond Belief course that we made. It was 2018. It's still really good. But if I try to pretend like I believe it when I don't, that doesn't work. But what I can do is ponder the possibility, and I can even incorporate my doubt, my incredulity, my resistance. I can incorporate all of that into my thought experiment and say, even with this resistance, I wonder if it's possible for me to be feeling this much resistance to an idea, and for the idea to be true, and for the idea to be useful, and for that idea to be the thing that's going to unlock me, right, from this current state of consciousness, getting somewhere where I feel good enough about this to respond to it in a way that's resourceful enough to create a result that I'm so happy about and so pleased with and over the moon about that I don't even really give a shit about this stuff anymore. I'm not even mad. the Bible verse about what they intend for evil, God intends for good. And I just imagine that they and evil is, just dumb shit people do, shitty shit that people do. And God is my consciousness or my creative faculty, just that part of me that has the ability, that part of you kind of in the background that sometimes just totally changes your state. Like you're just feeling real bad, and then all of a sudden relief washes over you, or inspiration washes over you, or a willingness to consider that maybe things are going to work out better than you thought washes over you. That's what that is. That part intends this thing for good. And all of a sudden, a person's behavior and the intentions underlying that behavior and the reasons for that behavior and how it's possible for them to be so inconsiderate or stupid or whatever it is, duplicitous, to engage in that behavior, all of that stuff becomes irrelevant, because what they intended for evil or what came from their inconsiderateness or their stupidity or whatever, there's a part of me that if not intended it for good, which is to say caused it to happen, set it into motion for my own good, certainly can make such good of it that in retrospect it will seem as though some wonderful, beneficent, loving part of me brought that misfortune, the misfortune of that individual, the misfortune of their personality, the misfortune of their mistreatment upon me, so that it could then take it and turn it into something fantastic. That works for me. It works for me when I'm willing to work with it. And usually when I'm not willing to work with it, the way that I get myself to the point of being willing to work with it is that I sit and wonder whether or not it might not be true, even though I'm totally certain that it's not. Like, well, what would it be like if it were true and I didn't, and I was convinced that it wasn't true? Well, it'd be a hell of a lot like what I'm feeling right now. And that takes that resistance and it takes that doubt and it makes it mean something different. You know what I'm saying? It helps me to realize that it doesn't mean anything that I'm currently resistant to it. It doesn't say anything about whether or not it's true. It doesn't say anything about whether or not it's likely to serve me. It doesn't say anything about any of that stuff. It just says something about the state of consciousness that I'm in currently. And the way that I get out of that is by imagining being in another state of consciousness. And the way that I imagine being in another state of consciousness is not by trying to force myself, because what I'm doing then is sitting in a shitty state, trying to pretend like I'm in a good one. The thing I do is I begin to ask myself questions that I ask myself questions that in order for me to answer those questions, some part of me has to drift off into another state. What's good about this? What's great about this? What can I learn from this? What if I'm feeling everything that I'm feeling and everything's perfect, everything's wonderful, everything's great, I'm going to get everything I want, things are working out, I can use this, I'm already responding resourcefully to this, and I haven't even felt the positive effects of it yet. That all of that stuff is how I get myself to move. Rather than making pictures, I ask myself questions that require me to move in order to answer them, right? And so, yeah, hope you found that interesting and useful.